Okay, in this video we're going to look at how to solve this quadratic equation by extracting the square. Currently, this equation is in standard form with everything set equal to 0. However, when we use the extracting the square method, we have to get the x term isolated on one side. That means get it by itself. So what we will first do is add 27 to both sides, and we have 3x squared equals 27. And then we still need to get that x squared term by itself, so if we divide both sides, we have x squared equals 9. Notice that the only reason I could use extracting the square method to solve this particular quadratic equation is because I had no term with only an x. That means no linear term. Okay, once we have the x squared isolated all by itself, we then can take the square root of both sides. The square root of a squared term is just the term itself. That's just going to give us x. And here we know the square root of 9 is 3. But remember, the square root of 9 isn't just 3, it's also could be negative 3, so we have to put plus or minus. On this problem, we do not have a linear term. That means we do not have an x term. So we can use the extracting the square method. We've got to isolate just this x squared term. So the first thing we'll do, and it does matter what order we do this in, first thing we'll do is add 5 to both sides to get 4x squared equals 16. Then we can divide both sides by 4, leaving us on this side with x squared, and over here with 4. Again, taking the square root of both sides gives us x equals plus or minus 2. Okay, here again, no x term, so we can extract the square. We can use that method on this quadratic. First thing we need to do, isolate the x squared term, so we're going to subtract 16 from both sides. That leaves us with x squared equals negative 15. Now when we go to take the square root, we have to remember, oh goodness, we're taking the square root of a negative number. What happens when we take the square root of a negative number? Well, first of all, you definitely have the plus or minus. But this negative here comes out as an I. Remember that. This negative here is going to come out in the next step as an I. Now we can continue and just say, okay, the square root of 15. Now the square root of 15 cannot be simplified, so we're going to leave it alone. That means the final answer, plus or minus I root 15. Alright, in this situation, we're going to consider this entire term here as the x squared term. So this entire term is the term that we're going to isolate to get by itself. Well, the first thing that we need to do, of course, is divide both sides by 2 to get him by himself. So we have x plus 3 squared equals 9. Now that we have this squared term here by itself, we can take the square root of both sides. When we take the square root over here, we're left with x plus 3. Over here, remember, taking the square root of a constant term means we have to have plus or minus, and then that would be 3. Now we're not quite at x equals. We've got to subtract 3 from both sides. This is where it gets tricky, and I see a lot of people make mistakes. This negative 3 here is negative 3 plus or minus 3. Now technically this is already two answers, but we can simplify. We can say that's the same thing as negative 3 plus 3 and negative 3 minus 3. Negative 3 plus 3 is going to give us 0. Negative 3 minus 3 is going to give us negative 6. So our answer here, negative 6 and 0. Notice we have two answers. That's what we expect. So that has been a little tutorial on extracting the square. We can only do it when we are missing the linear term. That means the x term.